sweater enough? And my daughter, which you will see, goes, can I have that sweater? So I'm gonna wear this, and then she's gonna take it next week. Chloe Winograd.
Test.
Then we put her on a
Evans,
financial.
on the 13th,
tighten,
what time are we
and
supposed
so
to be
she
there
went up
in
into
Franklin
my
Lakes?
bathroom to take
Yeah.
out garbage, and she came down with
9:30?
a whole bunch of makeup.
I didn't, no, don't know what I did.
I said, she's upstairs shopping.
She's on a budget.
Yeah, 8:30 to 9:30.
Yeah, I don't think it's even in the sanctuary.
It is one of my favorite.
I know, you were upset with the yeah, it looked pretty easy.
So they do a calendar too?
All right, 8:30 to 9:30.
Oh, thank you.
You know, now somebody's gonna put in a budget request for $1,000 for a new chair, watch. Yeah,
Oh, no, I can't go.
but you can't be sitting on it, you can't have weight on it.
No, well, you know what? It's fine. And then she sat and sunk.
I'm not going through that. I'm not going.
Go get the other.
Fooey.
Well, then don't give the low chair to the guy who, yeah, switch him around.
No, that's it. Thanks. Oh, we're ready.
Really?
How much we budget for the
Okay.
Something I would.
And it wasn't?
the budget newsletter?
Okay.
Do you know how much you budget for the newsletter? Budget newsletter?
I'm ready.
Good? Everybody ready?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Good evening. This is the Village Council Special Public Budget Meeting. The date is February 5th, 2024. The time is 5:08. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd. Here. Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? And so let's start with public comment.
3 minutes per person.
Hi. Hi, my name is Susie Mataharian. and
Susie, if you could speak into the mic a little
like
bit.
this.
Perfect.
This is new for me.
Excellent. That's okay.
You let me know. All right, my name is Susie Mataharian, and I live at 138 Weston Avenue. I'm the mother of 3 girls, all of which are in Ridgewood Public School System. We
If you
moved
get a
here.
little closer to the mic.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
We moved here 3 years ago, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my youngest daughter, Aria, and she is a 4th grader at Ridge. We use Clinton Avenue to walk to school, usually every day and every afternoon, and while you work through your budget process, I would just please like it if you kept in mind the kids that use Clinton to walk to school. It is becoming more and more unsafe. There's more traffic. There's barricades up, there's signs up, but cars just go right around it. We take pictures daily, we send it to the police department. They're probably tired of getting photos of us and watching the cars. So just think about them when you make a decision. Don't place the burden of safety into the little kids' hands. You know, that's a lot. My daughter's fortunate. I walk her to school, but there's a lot of kids that don't have a parent to tell them scoot to the side of the street. They're hearing cars honk behind them to get them to move and run to the side, and it's kind of scary. You know, it's not just cars, it's garbage trucks, it's Amazon delivery cars, it's Waze, people following Waze. I had one older lady, she rolled down her window and literally apologized and said, "I'm so sorry, I know I'm not supposed to come here, but Waze is forcing me to come here. So we're just asking that you follow the advice from the Ridgewood Police Department and the engineering department and just put sidewalks in. Shouldn't be doesn't seem like a problem to us. However, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susie.
Hi, my name is Catherine Brady. I'm also here to talk about the Clinton Avenue safety. I live at 141 Highland Avenue and moved here about 4 years ago in 2020. I have a fourth grader at the Ridge School, and I have a seventh grader who used to attend Ridge a few years ago. I'm here today because I want to implore the Village Council to prioritize resolving the Clinton Avenue issues this year and ensure that the children attending Ridge Elementary School have a safe walking path to school. My child, along with so many others in the neighborhood, walks to and from the school every day. Most of the time she walks alone, and she's taking a risk every time she does it. I've personally witnessed cars and trucks speeding along Clinton Avenue during the supposed closed street times, narrowly missing children and parents. It's unacceptable that Ridgewood does not provide a safe route for kids to walk to Ridge. I only recently learned the current ordinance to close Clinton Avenue is neither enforceable, nor does the police department have sufficient resources to enforce it, were it to shift to an actual street closure. Instead, the village is currently misleading students and parents into believing they have the right of way when they actually do not. It's really the worst of all worlds, thinking that you have a safe, blocked-off street, but you don't. I appreciate what the police department has done to gather data around alternative routes and also traffic volume. I also appreciate what the town engineer has researched and recommended. All that is left now is for the village council to set aside budget to ensure that we are no longer neglecting the safety of the families who walk to Ridge Elementary. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Catherine. And let me just say, this is a matter that Lorraine has been very involved in, but no one else on the Village Council has been addressed to us yet. We know that we're working on it. There was a meeting a couple weeks ago that most of us were unable to attend, but there's a meeting this Thursday night on the first floor here. I will be there. I know Lorraine will be there. And that's when I will be discussing it for the very first time. So this is obviously something that's very important to all of us. Like I said, but we have to just get our arms around it. I promise you we're going to do a deep dive into this and figure this out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have anyone else, Dylan?
I have nobody online.
Great. In that case, I'm
Paul,
going to...
could I just add to that because
Well, let me just close public
Okay.
comment first. And now that that's done,
Sure. So I feel for you guys. I was the safety chair, this is my big flex, at Orchard for 6 years. So and all of us are parents up here, so we understand the hazards around the school. Each of us has boards, and when the board comes up with something like the CSAC in this case, it comes to us. And the full 5 of us are not all on the same page because by law we can't all 5 meet. So the next step will probably be that it'll go on a workshop agenda where all the details that, we've been getting the emails, so some people have some information, we're not sure what's out there. It'll go on a workshop agenda. It'll come out in front. We'll be able to ask the police a question. We'll be able to ask engineering a question. And then it'll move forward for us to each individually discuss. So I just want to make sure, because we are in government process heavy, and this is the budget meeting, and we don't even have a value yet to discuss amongst the 5 of us. But so when it comes on the work session, I'm sure Lorraine will let you know, and that way all 5 of us then will have all the information. Okay.
yeah, and that's really a key point that she raises, that, by the way, no more than 2 members of the council can attend the meeting on Thursday. We are not allowed by law. So until everyone hears everything and gets to talk to police and engineering, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for people involved in this, families, and we'll discuss it at length and in detail. At this point, like I said, this is a brand new subject for us, but we are going to spend a lot of time on it to make sure we get this right. Okay? You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And with that, let's go, thank you. Let's go to our regular agenda. Keith?
Thank you, Mayor. In continuance of hearing from each of our departments at their budget hearings, I'd like to call up Kim McWilliams from our municipal court. She's our court administrator to make her budget presentation this evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how's everybody?
Good.
I just want to first start off with, we just signed a agreement with the collection agency for outstanding funds that are owed to the village. The balance is $60,811. It will not cost the village anything out of pocket, because what happens is whatever the defendants, which is the person that's accused, pays, 20% of that will go to the company. So that's good news, because there's a lot of, that's not a drop in the bucket.
Kim, if I may, how soon will they be able to engage?
They're going to start March 1st,
Okay, great.
so it's quickly.
Very good.
On the lines with savings, we also have an employee that is going to be retiring December 31st. So she's a clerk, violations, well, her title's actually data entry. If we go in line with that, we can hire a violations clerk. Instead of paying $75,000, we can start at $50,000. So that'll save next year, not this year. And that's the good news that I have. So I don't know if there's any other questions
Yeah,
or...
so first, let me thank you, because I see that you're asking for like 4.5%, which is a wonderful starting point, so thank you for bringing that to us. My only real question is, and I hate when I ask this because I don't want to penalize people for being good stewards of our money, but it looks like you actually spent quite a bit less than we appropriated last year, and I assume it looks like what your ask here is off of last year's appropriated amount, not what you actually spent. So I guess my question is, why was there such a big difference between what we appropriated versus what you spent? And then why are we not starting from what you spent last year as opposed to what you appropriated?
Someone's looking across the room at me. So there are a few things that haven't been posted here yet for some of the time that was incurred. What we do is we also have a settlement with shared service with Glenrock. So we sort of have to reconcile that as we move through. Plus, there's another $36,000 of a cash receipt that came in from the POAA that's offset in this actual line item. It isn't guaranteed every year. It's an excess that they had. You don't see it sitting in there, but that's one of the reasons why the actual is less than what the request was.
So I'm sorry, but I thought what I was looking at here was just our expenditures, not our income. So why is the $36,000 showing as an offset?
So the POAA, it was requested that money be transferred because of excess funds or funds available in the POAA trust. So Kim requested $36,000 to go against the payments that were made. That's why it's reduced. It's put in there rather than grossed up in revenue.
Okay, and I'm sorry, in which line are you putting me?
So I'm in line 1 for full-time.
And if I may, the POA is every time someone receives a parking ticket, a certain amount goes to this trust fund, and the administrative office of the courts has to approve what we spend, what we're allowed to. The filing cabinet, we can do a parking clerk salary, but it's very specific. You have to fight for the money. So,
Okay, and I'm sorry,
and it's not guaranteed, like Bob said.
I'm just not seeing it. Which number, account number?
So 011, the 185,000 actual.
Oh, I see. Okay,
If you add 36 to that,
gotcha.
you're going to get close to,
All right, so if you take that into account, then you're pretty close to flat.
correct.
All right.
How
Why
much
can't
is,
the rest of these be like this one?
when we're looking this, how would we find, other than asking Matt, how would we know where the ability to draw down on a trust is? Is there any indication here?
It's so rare.
Okay.
There's only 2 or 3 accounts that will affect it, like recycling trust is a big one, snow trust is a big one. You will be getting for the next meeting, a list of all the accounts that we are holding in trust.
Okay.
And an explanation as to what's in there. But this is a rare occasion. We don't transfer every year from the POA trust. It's only when there's sufficient
Yeah,
funds
right, right,
available.
And bear in mind, we need AOC approval
Yes.
on this account. So we can't just arbitrarily make that decision. We have to go to the county, and the county has to either approve or deny.
I'm with you, just tell me what AOC stands for.
Administrative Office of the Courts.
Got it. And that's because it's joint and shared?
No, it's every municipal court falls under the AOC.
Got it.
In this.
So if Kim wanted to buy a printer, for example, and she had money in the trust, she would have to file paperwork to get permission to use it that way. And then they tell me I can transfer that money.
Right. And the same thing with offsetting salaries.
Great. I mean, I love that we have a trust. I think it's a great drawdown, so great job, and I hope they always say yes to you.
Right.
They
And-
usually do.
And Kim, we've received notification from the AOC that they've approved the proposed budget, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
just 2 days ago.
Thank you.
And can I just ask one general question? So this has been a bit of a theme where we're coming in under budget compared to last year's appropriations. What do we do with all that extra money? I mean, are we able to carry that over, or using that to meet unforeseen expenses?
So there's two ways it's handled. You actually have 2 years to spend the money, but the expense has to be incurred within the year. So in 2023, if I get a bill in February or March
Right.
related to 23, I can use the money against that. That's the excess. After 2 years, whatever is left goes into fund balance, into surplus.
Okay, and are we going to be talking about any surplus we had from 2 years ago that we can now tap into
Yes.
now?
Absolutely.
Look forward to that conversation. then.
I know you are.
All right.
I have a question. I have a question about 01K, regular sessions. This is not a big dollar amount, but what happened between 2022 and 2023 that appropriation went from 25,300 down to 5,000 in 2023?
So we have regular sessions, there's 4 per month. When it goes into the 5th Thursday, if we have a backlog in tickets, then we would have to have a court session or DWI that's older. So we don't know until time passes.
No.
Does that make sense?
Pam,
So it
there's
depends
a
on the
little more,
calendar?
there's a little
A
more.
little more
to that.
history to that. Back in 2022, I believe we accounted for the prosecutor's salary in there, and then we moved it down to village attorney.
Oh, okay, so it's gone.
The part of that appropriation was moved from this budget to the village attorney's
A
budget.
different pot.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, the public defender and the prosecutor now fall under the village attorney's budget, even though they work in conjunction with the court.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Kim.
And if only the next person testifying comes in with a decrease in their budget, I think you set the tone for the evening. So we're looking for that.
Chief, you ready?
Chief Lyons, let's see if you can match that.
Welcome, Chief.
Welcome, hello. Hope everyone's having a good evening. Mine's a little bit more extensive than that, wish it wasn't. Real quick, I'll just give you a brief statement. 2023 was obviously a transitional year for us. We lost 2 of our top lieutenants and the chief. We are still working to hire replacements that we lost in 2022. I had broken that all out, but we're still actually not replacing the people we lost in 23. We're still replacing people from 2022. For the first time, we're using the county-wide list, which we have the civil service list. It's generally residents, then it goes to county and then state. We are very deep into the county list. That's why we are looking at exploring those other opportunities for hiring. We're having great issues, and it's not just the Ridgewood Police. Police in general are having a lot of issues in hiring new qualified candidates. Some of the big things that's going on currently is we're switching from the CALEA accreditation to the New Jersey State Police Association of Chiefs of Police accreditation program. It's a little bit more narrowly focused on what we actually do in New Jersey. New Jersey, and I'm sure everybody can kind of back me, is kind of on an island of its own when it comes to policies, procedures, and regulations. And CALIA was more based for California, Ohio, the rest of the country. We are now kind of focused in on what New Jersey actually does. New Jersey is actually setting the gold standard for a lot of the regulations that we have to comply with, which is a good thing. The rest of the country is actually slowly coming on board with that. We've already kind of rocketed ahead. Our Attorney General guidelines, a lot of other states just don't have them. So when they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we have sets of procedures for almost everything that just don't exist in many other states. Some do, but the lion's share don't. We prioritized our presence at the schools. We're trying to direct a lot of people there. Obviously, we have an SRO program, and we're working towards something else, which we'll get to later. We prioritized the presence at our citizen safety advisory committees and our CBD advisory committees. That's just some of the stuff we're trying to do. Moving forward, the major focus we have is licensing. This is brand new for 2024. Again, some other states have done this before us, but we're in a very good spot because a lot of our training already lines up perfectly for the new licensing requirements. So it's not going to be a crazy new lift. However, it does create a whole new administrative section of how we're documenting, how we're tracking, all sorts of things like that. Whereas we're already doing the training, which is the good news, it's now we have to just kind of modify how we train it and track it and do all that stuff. Again, the biggest issue we have is luckily, the council has given us authorization to hire. We're having issues finding the people to hire. So what this means is that some of the numbers, myself, Keith, and Bob, might be able to adjust moving forward. We're not 100% sure yet, but as of right now, we found 3 people to place in the police academy. We need 8. We found 3. Hopefully a 4th we can find for. We won't be able to get them into a class coming up shortly, but maybe we can find 4, 5, and 6, hopefully all the rest of 5 for the end of the year, but I don't know that that's going to be possible.
Are they in the budget, though, the ones we don't have? Or
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So what the council authorized in that closed session,
Right.
if you recall, we had it pretty late at night in this room. That's what Bob applied to the budget. However, between now and the time that we introduce this budget, we anticipate that we'll be able to scale back some. We're going to be conservative about that because obviously the need to have police officers when we're able to hire them, we want to have that ability during the course of the year. But we're going to work with the chief to refine some of the numbers that you see here tonight.
I'll be honest, I hope we don't have to scale back, but it does very much look like we will. It's just very hard to find people.
So 6 are in the current budget, or 5?
Right now, we
it's
have,
5. I think
we
it's
have
5.
4 starting right now, and then another 4 that were scheduled
So-
starting towards the end of the year.
So the game plan when going into the new year was that we were going to budget for 4 in January and 4 in July. Those salaries would obviously have been prorated. So that's what's in here.
Oh, okay.
Now we're a month into the year already, and we haven't hired anybody. We have 3 that are pending the start of the academy, whether they go to the Bergen County Academy, which was suspended for a period of time, or whether they go to the Passaic County Academy, which we have 4 slots reserved. I believe that starts in April. We're still going to see some adjustments to the budget from a salaries and wages standpoint, just based on when start times would be. And then we'll have to handicap the hiring process for the rest of the year, understanding that the council's goal was to have 8 hired throughout
Right.
2020.
So essentially, we have 8, we have 3 candidates for the first tranche, but
Yeah.
okay.
We had 4, and unfortunately, one was deployed at the last minute, so
Right.
he's not going to be here to work for us. Yet, maybe in the future.
Yeah, depending, there's some word that he may actually be back by the end of this year. If that's the case, maybe we can get him into an academy late
That'd be
in
great.
the year. But
That'd be great.
that, it also might be extended till the next year. But we are going to have to find alternative routes to find the additional 5.
So I know everyone here at Clearly supports that, so thank you for pushing ahead on that, given how difficult it is to find qualified candidates. And I know from our conversations, Chief, that you're not settling, which I very much appreciate. I'd rather wait to get the right people than get the wrong people in quickly. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for your folks that are making up that gap with overtime, I'm sure. I have a couple of questions. I don't want to cut you off, but.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of
Right.
where we're going, but go ahead.
And again, also, let me preface this by, obviously, we all have a tremendous amount of respect for the police, so please do not take any of our perhaps pointed questions as being derogatory. They are far from that.
Yep, totally understand.
But with that, it looks like you're asking overall for only a 2.2% increase?
Believe so.
So first of all, well, not first of all, thank you for that. That's still, just because your budget's huge, and, well, it should be, that's still not an insignificant amount of money. And I keep coming back to the same sort of questions I have before, which it looks like, you're only asking for about 200,000 or so more versus what we appropriated to you last year, but close to $500,000 over what you actually spent last year. So is there any wiggle room there that we can bring some of this budgeting down to maybe bring it closer to what we actually spent so that we can make up for some of your colleagues' aspirations?
So what I'll explain, which is unfortunate, is we're having huge supply chain problems. So we actually tried to order a lot of the stuff that we need, and we're unsuccessful. A lot of stuff, as you know, vehicles is just one of them. A lot of stuff is just taking 8 months to 18 months. And when you try to order it, they literally tell you, yeah, that could be 8 to 18 months.
Right.
So we'll order it. They don't bill us for that stuff to hold it. So we might still be getting some stuff that we have to pay for within this year from last year's budget. So I wouldn't hold too true to those actual numbers. That being said, some stuff we were just not able to order because they have imposed ordering windows, not just on cars, but on some sorts of electronics and different things that we do. So while those numbers are a little lower in the actual column, it wasn't for a lack of trying. A lot of stuff that we're hoping that we'll be able to get ahead of this year by ordering sooner and actually get in those lists and get on those, lack of a better term, waiting lists to get materials and supplies. So the numbers that we put as our proposed or our requests are pretty accurate. They're not like shooting high. And especially with, if you take a look at, let's see, other contractual service, 029, a lot of stuff, just the contracts that we use and are required to use, just they're going up. People are raising their things by 8, 9, 10%. And what I'm talking about here is the Axon camera system, crossing guards, licensing, Lexipol, the shooting range. These are all contractual services that we're required to, we need them. And they're not sticking with the 2%, 3% caps. They're like, hey, we raised our rates 10%. And you're like, oh, thank you.
Chief, can you speak to the accreditation piece too?
Yeah, so one of the bigger raises in the 029, other contractual services, is when I first took over, what I did is I removed one of our sworn personnel from a position where he did only accreditation, and I put him back on the road because we are having a hard time getting qualified officers. And he's a more senior officer, and he's a good officer. What I had said was I need to contract with Lexipol, who helps do accreditation, to make up for that. So there's an increase there of approximately $42,000 to have Lexipol help with our accreditation. That increase is only a one-time increase of 42. It goes down to about $12,000 a year. But this first year, when we're just getting accredited, is more expensive. That being said, I would like to explain, I took an expensive sworn police officer and am asking for to 42. While it is a brand-new line item, and if anybody looks at it, it's like, hey, we never had that before, please remember to offset the senior patrol officer that we got back on the road for that.
Right.
And then in the next years, it should be down to $12,000 a year. Granted, I don't know what the interest and their little price rates will be, but it will be negligible compared to the cost of the senior patrol officer.
So that's great. I know I'm a big proponent of if you have a badge and a gun, you probably should be outside the office. So
it's what we've been trying to push for.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Listen, I know it also looks like we had a bit of a windfall in that our salaries are actually down. We would normally expect that to see that, with step increases, would expect to see that grow. The fact that we're down, I mean, it's not down by much, but the fact that we didn't grow is a huge offset to the rest of your budget. So I would go back and just say, we normally are never going to see a negative salary number, from percentage-wise. If there is any other savings, and listen, I can't really beat you up too much because, again, 2.2% is fantastic, and we're giving you 8 police officers, which we absolutely deserve. But to the extent that before we start voting on a final budget, look at some of these other expenses, which are up, significantly. But again, you're offsetting that with the loss in salaries to see if there's some other sort of pencil sharpening we could do there. But again, overall, great work.
Thank you.
So just a quick question. So last year, the actual overtime budget was like $270,000. You're budgeting for $350 this year. Is that because of the lack of police officers?
So we were fully staffed, not fully staffed, but we were operational last year. This year, we expect to be under for a significant portion of the year, especially with the police academy being pushed back. So I am not confident that the number we came in last year will be, hopefully we can keep it within the realm, but we are going to be over just because we're going to have, as people retire this year, we do not have bodies to replace them.
Okay.
And they start retiring very shortly, as soon as August 1st.
So if we had hired the police officers that were requested last year, you probably wouldn't be asking for 350,000 overtime.
Could have been
this year.
slightly less, yeah.
Okay.
And keep in mind, too, when the council adopts the ordinance to change the table of organization, that will indefinitely cut back on the brass overtime for that one shift where we only have one supervisor. So that'll have an effect on overtime once we make that promotion.
Okay. And the only other question,
To just throw a point on the table here.
okay.
When I first got here, that overtime line item was close to $800,000.
No, I remember that, but that was
So
because.
police have done a
very
great job in
understaffed.
pulling that back and, dealing with scheduling that they had to, so accolades for them. They're-
Yeah, I mean, that 800,000 was the last time we were understaffed. And I mean, I was actually thrilled when I saw that it was 270,000 last year, because I know when we talked to Chief Lucky last year and she asked for 5 and we gave her 1, I said in my mind, we're going to have another 800,000 overtime year. So that number I was happy with, but I still feel like if we hired people last year, we wouldn't be in that overtime situation for 2024, but it is what it is. The only other question I had was, I mean, it was just something that was on social media the last couple days. Somebody posted that the police department only has one motorcycle and it got washed out in one of the storms.
So it did get washed out, but that was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I saw that.
So
I-
it's a new post that's very old.
Yes, so that is correct. It did get washed out, but ever since, I'm going to say, ever since that happened, we've taken great pains to make sure that nothing is in that area, which is very hard to do because we don't have a amount of space. But that did happen, but it happened in 2021.
And just to be clear with regard to that press report today, that did not happen during these most recent storms.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I was curious, because I had never heard of it before. But it made me think, does the police department want or need, would it be helpful to have a motorcycle in the?
Absolutely. For a couple of reasons, too, is one, we do try to use smaller vehicles when we can. I know everybody doesn't like the Tahoes and stuff, and they have their purposes, and we do need some of them. We have tons of equipment, and I could get into the merits of large vehicles all day, but there are times when we want to drive around the central business district, and you want to get on pathways and behind buildings and all stuff that a Tahoe or a Ford Explorer cannot do it.
Right.
A motorcycle does serve that purpose, as well as it's an excellent community policing tool. People love it. As you see, like, stuff gets traction. People, every time we do an event downtown for the holidays, we had Glen Rock bring their motorcycle, and kids are lining up to take
yes.
pictures with their motorcycle, and it
Yes.
makes me feel kind of bad because it's not ours. But yes.
No, I remember, and I actually spoke to that officer. My husband loves motorcycles, so he actually went up and introduced himself, and he told us he was from Glen Rock, and we were like, Ridgewood needs a motorcycle, So, I mean, I know you're not asking for one, is that correct?
We had in the past, it was cut a few times, so this time it was kind of bare bones, but we could also look into getting a used one.
How
For
much
cheaper.
money do you think you would need for a used one?
15,000.
Okay. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's well worth it. I don't know if we want to throw that in there somewhere, not that I'm, spending money haphazardly, but I think if we could find a good used motorcycle for $15,000, it would go a long way.
I hear everything you're saying about a motorcycle, and let's see where the numbers come out. I'm still very concerned in that the last session, everybody's coming with 15, 20, 25% overages. And the motorcycle, all due respect, if we can afford it, great. To me, it's not a must-have. But certainly, if there's money left over in the budget, happy to explore it. Is there any sort of certification or other costs associated with the motorcycle that come with it?
They have the certification class right at Bergen County
Okay.
Police Academy, and it's free of charge for in-county residents. So other than helmets and gear, which is going to be negligible.
So, I mean, I too would be cool. I remember the Glen Rock guy. It was pretty neat. But again, let's figure out where we end up for the end is my view.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So one, I just wanted to check in. I went through my notes from last year. Are we doing better with the Oprah? Have you taken it away from
So
full-time
yes,
policing? And
we hired a civilian,
And that's
and she
working.
is currently working on redacting videos pretty much 8 hours a day.
Great.
And thank
So
God
there's
she's
no
still
police-
doing it, and she's
Fun
okay
job.
doing it.
So no
It's
no
tough.
police are like actually working on the reduction? It's 100% clerical at this point?
So it can never be 100% clerical because police will still have to review certain cases and certain ones that will be going to the prosecutor's office and stuff like that, which a detective has to review, but I'll say we've freed up 75% of his time.
That's great.
And I mean, that's the most you're going to free up because some stuff gets into evidence and it has to have police oversight. But the bulk of that work now is definitely 100% civilianized, which
Excellent.
helps us immensely.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask this, and I'm assuming everybody else knows. What do you mean by the change in licenses, and what is the actual burden? You said that 3 times, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. So New Jersey passed a law that requires police officers to be licensed now. Some other states have done it. Basically, just like attorneys have licenses, CPR has a license that you have to maintain. New Jersey's always had strict standards in what education and what classes you have to take, and qualifying twice a year, use of force, domestic violence, but there was no standardized license to go. So the Police Training Commission has implemented a licensing system. So what has happened now is they gave us a limited list of what classes you have to take within the calendar year, how you have to take them, and how they have to be documented. I will say it's in flux. They created a new system. It's called Arcadis. It is online. Maybe 20% of it is up and running. They're trying to do an LMS, a learning management system. That is not up and running yet. However, by the end of this year, a third of our police department will have to have their licenses renewed. So what we're looking at, and what I had spoken earlier about, was an outside vendor has kind of come up, and the same one that does accreditation, and said that they're going to implement the plan and give you all the required licensing training done. That way we can make sure we are complying with this new legislation. This training is pretty much being done all around because everybody doesn't really quite understand what will be needed from us. And in all honesty, the Attorney General and the PTC, they created this program, but they're still learning with it. So it's my definite recommendation that we get all the help we can right now because we don't want to be behind. We want to be in front of this new licensing requirement.
That's great. And then I have one more question. First of all, did all of you guys know about that? Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that, and I find that interesting. That's great, and I think it's awesome to use professional services for it. My question is with going back to the 8 and the 4 and the 4, if we go with the budget and we don't achieve it, which it seems like we're not going to because we can't find the hires, how does that work? It just goes into undemonstrated? Can police carry over to next year?
So before our adoption in April, we'll probably have a better handle on what the timing is for new people coming on board. So we can make adjustments then.
Okay.
If we leave the budget intact the way it is and it's not used, then it goes into the subsequent year and we can transfer to other accounts if we need.
That was my-
Or
but
it'll roll over.
It can roll over into a different area?
2 years.
Okay.
2 years. If I can call everybody's attention to sheet 29.
29?
29. So to the chief's point, we're budgeting $45,000 and $10,000 respectively for a total of 55 halfway down the page for Lexipol.
Yep.
This is the accreditation that the chief is talking about. In my mind, this is really part of that state mandate in order to accommodate the licensing requirements for police officers. So this is not something that we've budgeted before. If you notice, the 23 column is blank. But these are the dollars that we're going to need to appropriate under that contractual line item in order to meet the standards of the licensing requirements for all the police officers.
So just to clarify, it is 45, not 42?
Yeah, we're going to get that. I'm sorry?
It's 45,000, not
It's
42?
$45,000 for the Lexipol accreditation, but that's only for the first year.
No, I
Subsequent
understand
years,
that.
it'll be 12.5, and then the licensing requirements on top of that for Lexipol are $10,000.
and this will go on as additive, like CLE for lawyers, right? They'll have to keep doing this? It's not a one-time, yes?
Yes, so licensing is every year. The way they broke it up was the initial is some people have to do it this year, some people next year and the next year. But moving forward, they'll have to do continuing education every year. We'll have to document it in their online portal every year. The only question we have is some of the training that they recommended, they didn't say what it constitutes. So whereas it says you must provide case law training. Case law training, as the attorneys here know, could be 20 minutes to 12 years of case law training. So they have to kind of come up with the, these are the cases, or it's, arrest, search, and seizure case law, it's use of force case law, we don't know. But we will be getting guidance on that, and having a company that'll come up with accredited tests like the Lexapol will do, will give us kind of not who's doing it. We have this guy teaching it. It'll be, this is the state recommended, the New Jersey State Chiefs of Police recommended courses that we're taking. So,
And I'm sure some feel that it's a great thing that police officers are being licensed. I think that's yet to be seen. But at the same time, this is a great example of the state mandating something, but they're not paying for it. And that can be very frustrating when you're putting a budget like this together.
well, I will also say, and this is the thing I wanted to interject, is we have from that licensing, we have new mandates for training. They did not give us funding for that training, so we're looking at that over time, and we're talking about how 270 and now 350. We have 16-hour, 2 8-hour days of active shooter that are mandated. And while I 100% agree and say they're necessary, and will never say otherwise, I think we should do more than that. That is a lot of overtime and a lot of money, 16 hours of active shooter training.
It's a lot of unfunded mandates.
Exactly.
Right.
I actually agree with the mandate, but the money should have come from
But
somewhere.
not the unfunded part.
And then, Chief, do you want to talk a little bit at the bottom of the summary page, but there's actually a tab entitled Class 3. You want to just bring us up to speed on your discussions with the superintendent of schools on this?
Yes. So the Class 3 is a program that I've been very adamant about bringing about, and I know some of you share my sentiment. It is basically retired police officers that will be used as security within the schools. I've had some extensive talks with the superintendent of schools, and he is bringing it to his board to try to get the salaries paid for, which would be approximately $60,000 a person. So he's looking to do 3 this year. Again, I don't believe that's passed, so I know he's looking for it. In every other municipality, what generally happens is the school board will pay the salaries, and the municipalities will pay for the training, uniforms, car, and firearms. That's by far the best way, because what we would do is we would take these 3 retired police officers, bring them to our active shooter training, bring them to the range, bring them to do all that stuff with us, even do some lineups, make sure they know what's current and going on in our community. As that's being done, we put all the kind of cost here. This is it's an estimated cost. Uniforms shouldn't be that expensive, but the police radios are, and we want them on our same frequency, so we have an immediate conduit. Should we need anything in the school, we can literally just use our radios. There's no delay in communication. This includes leasing of cars for them. We figured they don't need very expensive cars, but they do need cars to put all their equipment in. We would like to, and again, outfit them with ballistic helmets, ballistic shields, body armor, radios, incident command structure stuff. That would all be in the car. We would mark the car and have it put out in front of the school as a deterrent. So this was basically the cost. You'll see the Class 3 is $62,450. This is just for radios, uniforms, firearms, things like that. The training we could kind of absorb into us. There shouldn't be too much training as long as we do them while they're on duty and stuff like that. We can absorb training costs for the most part.
This is for 3 Class 3 officers?
Yes.
And this has not been passed
No.
by the Board of Education?
No.
No,
Do
and
we have-
I just want to be clear, if you look at that sheet, the Class 3 sheet, we would be responsible for they would be our employees, because they have to be, by statute, they have to report to the chief of police. We would be responsible for equipping them, clothing them, giving them all the resources that they need to do the job as a Class 3 police officer in the schools. However, the salary would be reimbursed conceptually. Again, none of this is etched in stone. The salary would be reimbursed by the Board of Education, as we're proposing it in this budget. All of that has to be worked out. There'll have to be an agreement that's written by the attorneys on both sides, but we want to prepare that we would need to do the onboarding and the equipping of these Class 3 officers.
So this money we're putting in the budget, but if the Board of Education doesn't pass it, then what happens to this money?
That's a Bob question, but we wouldn't use it.
You get it back in 2
Could I
years,
ask,
is that?
is it just for the, so 3, is it for the high school and the middle schools? Because right now we have a full police officer and an SRO, correct? Could you go over the school structure now?
Sure, right now, we only have one SRO.
Okay.
We have an SRO, but he floats to all the schools. And an SRO and a Class 3 are actually very different.
Yeah.
The SRO is supposed to be the liaison with the police department. He'll go and he'll teach classes. He will, train kids on pedestrian safety, bike safety. He teaches some of the little forensics classes that I have at the high school. He's more of a liaison than a security officer. At any given time, we don't know what school he'll be in. He goes where the problems are, and he addresses them as needed. This would be, and again, this is working with the Board of Education, one at the high school, full-time security, and one at each middle school. The idea would be hopefully to expand in the future, but this would be a good start. Many towns right now have multiple Class 3s in their schools, in addition to the SRO. The SRO is generally kind of the floater, and he doesn't have to stay at one school. In fact, he's not supposed to. He's supposed to float around from each school to address the problems they have and kind of be the liaison with the juvenile detective and the police department in general.
So the existing $100,000 is for the SRO, correct?
That's the SRO.
So that's the SRO, and that, I felt like it was 100% the high school, but no.
It's not.
Okay.
The SRO currently goes up to Ridge, Somerville, Hawes, anything, whenever they're doing fire drills, any drills, he'll be there. And that's he's really the floating liaison, if you will. And anytime there's an issue with a student that would require, call it intermediate police assistance, not quite criminal, but you need to elevate it a little past the school level, that's where he'll go and he'll address those. Whereas the Class 3 would not leave the school he's assigned to because he's responsible for the physical structure there.
We'll have Bob answer the mayor's question, but I just want to point out, too, most of those line items that we would be responsible for at the top of that page are startup costs. So these are not necessarily costs that we would have going into next year's budget. The portable radios, the firearms, the physicals for the new hires, all of that is sort of startup costs to create the program. So that number that the village is responsible for, if this came to fruition, that number would go substantially down in the 25 budget.
So if this doesn't happen by the time we adopt, then we have a choice of either removing it or leaving it as is with the understanding that it may happen by the end of the year. If it's not used, it's available to transfer to other accounts if we need them in November, December.
Do we have any idea when the Board of Education might be making a decision in this?
Well, they're starting their budget discussions now as well. So I believe Dr. Schwartz was going to bring that to the Board of Ed and to his business administrator. Keep in mind, this program wouldn't start, if it did start, until September. So again, these startup costs are what we would need to get it off the ground.
Got it. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, with the school resource officer, we share the cost of that with the Board of Ed, 50/50,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, currently
Okay.
50/50.
So these new hires, if the Board of Ed agrees to it, their salary would be paid 100% from the Board of Ed, and we would just be responsible for basically startup costs and all that.
That's been the successful model in the numerous towns that have implemented that. I'm sure all that could be up for discussion, but that's kind of what has worked everywhere else, because they really are spending 100% of their time in the school.
Right.
Whereas the SRO isn't. And that's what people get a little confused about. They think, oh, you have a security. He's splitting his time between the department work and the school. He's supposed to be liaising between the two, which he does a very good job of, but that is what they're doing. So they're 50% the police and 50% the schools.
And the
whereas
difference
Class 3
here,
really are there.
is the sworn police officer who's the SRO currently is a 12-month employee of the village. Whereas these employees, special class 3s, would potentially only work 180 days a year
Okay.
when the kids are in school.
And I don't know if you mentioned it, I know you mentioned 60,000, but I thought that was our responsibility. Did you mention the salary that these Class 3 would have?
So they're generally paid an hourly, or around $40 an hour, which is 60,000 for the year, because
Okay.
it's half a year. But that is generally borne by the school board.
Right, okay, thank you.
So-
Sounds good.
Thank you for putting this together. I'm a strong proponent of this, and I just asked, what was the thinking behind focusing on the elementary, I'm sorry, not focusing on elementary schools, but rather focusing on the middle schools and the high school?
Right now, we're trying to kind of gauge how well and successful the program would be in Ridgewood. My initial plan would be to put one in every school. That's what, as the chief, I strongly believe in.
It's my thinking as well, but yeah.
Unfortunately, budget-wise, I think the idea with the school was they start with the older children who are statistically more prone to get in trouble. However, the other ones, I'm not saying anything can't happen there, but statistically, you start with the older children, then hopefully work it to the rest.
Okay.
I think it's purely monetary at this time.
No, I'm okay with the baby steps approach, makes sense. I would very much like to leave this in the budget unless we know for sure the Board of Ed is not going to vote for it. But again, thank you for putting this together. I think this is something that's sorely needed.
I agree.
So would we keep the SRO and agree to 1, 2, or 3 of the new retired police officers, depending on what the Board of Ed comes up with?
Yes, I would like to keep, the SRO program is kind of separate from this. The SRO program kind of bridges that, with the junior police academy and everything, kind of gives us a little bit more involvement with the juveniles. The Class 3s, even though they'll report to the police, are primarily employed by the schools, and we won't have that much interaction. They won't really be bringing cases or things like that back to us. So the SRO program, I'd really like to actually someday even make more robust and have more people involved in that. But the Class 3s and the SROs are separate. They really do work very well hand in hand, but they are separate and apart, so I really wouldn't want to destroy one to start the other.
And remind me, is the SRO armed?
The SRO is, he's a full sworn police officer, full everything.
As are the Class 3s, by the way.
Yeah, I heard that part.
And I just want to stress that we're sort of in the infancy of having this conversation. Obviously, the superintendent's only been here since July, had a lot of priorities at the district level. So, the chief and I have been having these conversations. We're going to see how this conversation evolves as we get to March when we introduce the budget, and we'll see where we stand. And also, I think the district may have an opinion on what their priority is between, the traditional SRO and the special. So I think they have a voice in this as well, so.
Good. Other questions? Chief, thank you so much.
Of course.
Can we just go over the chief's capital requests real quick?
Oh, by all means.
So the chief initially made a request for additional police cars after we did a thorough review of open capital and also applied some funding to the budget, which, as I've mentioned to the council, is my long-term goal to get our entire police fleet rotation under the operating budget rather than in the capital budget. But he's been able to reduce that number down to $66,000 to bridge the gap on the needed police vehicles. And with that effort, we were able to make a request for $120,000 to replace portable radios. I'd like the chief just to talk about that because we do have some radio struggles, not only with police, but you've heard it from Chief Judge on the fire side, and you'll hear it from Jeremy Kleiman when he comes in at the next meeting to talk about OEM. But Chief, you just want to talk about where you stand with the portable radios?
Yeah, sure. So our portable radios are actually much more antiquated than the fire department and even OEM. We have 6,000s, and the current iteration is 8,000s. So what we would like to do, and basically what that means is the 8,000s are now multi-band frequencies. So we can switch over to, the county now has frequencies we could go to, and so does the state. Our radios do not allow us to do that. So in an emergency, if we wanted to coordinate with other towns, we have to go through central dispatch, they have to call them. It's a very complicated thing to do. Also, when we have other towns working in our town, they cannot speak with us without getting one of our radios, which is, complicated, especially for large events or when you have a real major issue. What we're trying to do is switch over to the 8000s, which, aside from infrastructure, which we'll need to discuss separately and, to actually build up the infrastructure, this will allow us to pick a county frequency and actually go on the same frequency as Midland Park, Cohokus, Paramus. So we can actually be interoperational with all those towns without changing infrastructure. They're not our channels, so we'll have to request the permission from the county or the state, but in a real emergency, we will be granted it immediately. So the idea is to transition all to these 8000s. The fire department already has the 8000s, so they need different infrastructure stuff. We just want to get up to those. The problem is they are extremely expensive. So we're talking about over 8,000 a radio, and we have the need for 50 radios. So the money in here, you see the 120,000, we're not talking about too many. So my idea is to try to do it over 2 or 3 years. Obviously, we can't spread it out over 5 years because with technology, by the time we get the last ones at 5 years, we're going to be needing to replace the top end again, unfortunately. So if we could do it in 2 years and actually split and say, hey, we got all the command staff and the supervisors have the radio, that way if there is a critical incident, they can switch over and communicate with all the other towns. I think that would be the best way to go, and then the next year we can get the rest of the line officers to have all of them as well. Once we do that, there are other options that we can explore with channels and things like that once everyone is on that system. But this is a good starting point, is to get all supervisors and command staff on these radios.
You bought $40,000 worth of radios last year. Were they the 8000s, and how do you like them?
So we actually still have a lot of that 40,000 left because we were planning on implementing this, where we're trying to kind of tier it into that. The 8000s are a much better radio, just in general. We have one on loan from the county that we've been using, just so we have some sort of interoperability, but it doesn't really work when there's one and, we have 8 people driving around.
So Bob, can we use some of that 40,000 on this, or is it the same rule where we have to wait 2 years?
No, the $40,000 is in capital.
Yeah, it's in capital.
So we're accumulating the capital to get enough to buy the requisite amount of radios. So what I foresee him doing, and Chief, forgive me if I'm speaking out of school here, but take the 40,000 and the 120 from this year, make a purchase.
Exactly.
Next year, try to match that number, make a purchase, and then you should be up to date with all your inventory, correct?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're looking at. So I have the 40,000 from 2023 right there that I have earmarked to add to this, and we'll get as many as we can this year, and then hopefully we will be able to finish the.
So it'll be 160 this year, and we'll probably somewhere around 120, 140 next year to bridge the gap, and that'll replace everything that the chief's in need of having.
But really 120, because we said yes to 40 last year, right?
It's 120, it was a 40 last year,
Yeah,
120
okay, good.
this year.
Got it.
And then there'll be another ask for next year.
I remember last year being brand new to the council and blown away by the cost of radios. And I couldn't believe it. For me.
Radios are by far the most expensive piece of equipment we have.
And my only question was last year with the radio allocation, we did, I believe, approve some for EMS. Have those all been given elsewhere? Like, does the fire department just assume all the radios from EMS?
I'm not, I don't actually know the right thing.
When
but I
Jeremy
would
comes
assume
into the
so.
next meeting, he can
They may have
explain
gone
exactly how all that's segregated now between emergency ops and the fire department.
I mean, I think it's great. The more that we can communicate and the more we can draw on larger services. I mean, it would be unfortunate if we ever had that day, but I think we need to be prepared. And
So we've actually had plenty of incidents because you got to remember we have contiguous towns that we can't communicate with. And we've had incidents in Midland Park or on the border where they come to help us or we go to help Paramus, and you just basically find one of the cops from the other jurisdiction and stay close to them. because and they can't talk to us, we can't talk to them. We can do it through Central, which does work, but there's a big delay in where you could just say, hey, everybody switch over to this channel and then actually have that kind of.
So I'm completely supportive. This makes all the sense in the world. You say you need 50, I assume one per officer. can you share? Like, I mean, I assume you guys, you know, I mean, I've been downstairs, you guys have a stack of radios, you don't have 50 cops on it all, you know, I imagine it's unheard of to have everybody on at the same time.
So
And Evan, if it makes you feel better, I was thinking the same thing, so I was going to ask that question.
So here's the problem with that sometimes is we always plan for, our officers have their radios home at all times. We have, everybody kind of listens to the radio, and we also plan for, we have at any given time, working in town, 25, 30 people. When we have our major events, every officer is here. So there would come to a lot of issues where it would come to, you don't have your own radio, and you wouldn't be able to kind of operate. The other thing too is they're serialized and numbered, so you know exactly whose radio is whose. So that would be very tricky to kind of change off because there's the FCC regulations and things like that.
I have to assume, though, at least at the beginning, before we have 50 radios, you would share?
So yeah, in the beginning, that's kind of the thing, is we would get them to, we disperse them into each squad well enough that they would be, we'd be able to manage the year. I wouldn't want to go much past a year, year and a half before getting them. Not to mention, I can guarantee that when we go to place this order, they're going to say that it's like 15 months away. I made that up, but that seems how everything goes right now, so.
Okay.
With regard to long-term planning on the radios, for 25, 26, and 27, if I'm reading this correctly, you've predicted $20,000 a year, but wouldn't it have to be more like
Oh, yeah, so
60,000?
that was my prediction prior to the number being cut. My initial ask was 360,000. So with that and the 40, with that and 40 would have been 400,000, which would get us 50 radios at 8,000 apiece.
I see.
So I didn't change the numbers because it was cut to 120 from 360. So those numbers would drastically change. Like next year would have to be, again, 160 or whatever it would
I
be.
see. And then, if I may go back to operations, there was a big jump in uniforms, uniforms and something else.
The new hires. So
Yeah.
that's in anticipation of us actually being able to hire 8.
Okay,
So normally, you'd see that number, we're gonna hire 2. Uniforms, you know, we only have to, about $7,000, $8,000 a person. But if you're gonna hire 8, that number goes up. Same with the medicals, the psychologicals, all those things are $2,000 plus dollars. So when you're hiring one person, it's $4,000. When you're hiring 8, it's substantially more.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anything else for the chief?
I was just say overall really strong. Again, I think you had some wind at your back this year with the salaries.
We lost a lot of top-level people, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's bad, but I guess from a bottom line, it's good. Again, I would hope that we could have had a closer to flatter year, given the windfall we've gotten a little bit on that. Because I'm never gonna see this again on this council. Never gonna see a
Yeah.
windfall like that on this council. So would ask maybe just to go back and see if there are ways to sharpen the pen, which will, you know, hopefully give you some credit for next year. But again, 2.2% is hard to argue with.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you so
Of course,
much.
anytime.
Mayor, next up, we have the Ridgewood Public Library.
Just so you know, emergency management is not going tonight. It's going to go next time.
Jeremy's out of town, so we're going to reschedule him for our next budget meeting.
Good evening, how are you?
So Mayor, just before we start, I just want to thank Lori and her team. We've had a great relationship that's still in the process of being built between the village and the public library. I value all the work that they do over there. Public library serves as a great resource for people in the community. We talk often about the fact that libraries are not just books where people come to study or to take out references or anything of that nature, but they've really become community centers unto themselves. I just want to point out to the council, and many of you probably know this from being through budget before, but the set amount, the dollar set aside for the public library is statutory. It's based on a formula that was adopted by the legislature years ago, and it's 1/3 of a mil of each dollar of assessable property within the municipality based on the equalized valuation. So that number is statutory. So Lori's here tonight to present what's in her statutory amount and the budget and some of the good things that they're doing over at the Ridgewood Public Library. So Lori, the floor is yours.
Thank Thank you, Keith, and I appreciate the effort that has been made, including the library, in department head meetings. I feel much more engaged with what's going on with the village so that we can respond, effectively when you need something from us. So thank you for that.
Lori, I'm not sure your microphone is on.
Maybe I'm not talking loud enough.
Much better.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta
I
be-
will speak
She
into the
speaks with a
microphone.
library voice.
So we come to you again in our advantageous position of having a good $350,000 year. We don't take that lightly. We look at our stewardship of that money.
Excuse me, if you could keep that closer, just so
Our
that people-
stewardship of that money.
Perfect, thank you.
Is very important to us. So when we look at an increased amount like that, we look at it as, we know that that can go either way at any time. So we try not to put it into categories that would cause us an ongoing expense. So we look at books and materials, things that will directly benefit our residents and also our aging building. We put it there because those will also directly benefit the residents as they enter the building. So that's our sort of strategy going forward when anytime this happens. I just wanted to share a couple of successes. Anyone who has walked through the building lately has seen that we have finally mostly completed the downstairs renovation that we set out to do last year with mostly privately raised funds. So the carpet was on the village, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And I did want to mention, because I'm very proud of the staff, that we did it without closing the building, not one day. We did have to close off access to the children's department, but we brought materials out. We worked out of the lobby, and when you ask the staff to do something, they're going to get it done. So it would have been easier. Would it have been easier for us to close a couple days? Yes, but they made it happen. So I just wanted to point that out.
And we want to say thank you, and I've seen those changes, and they look wonderful. And I think they enhance the entire library experience, so we're all grateful.
Great, thank you. And there's more to come. And I don't want to go over too many statistics. You know what we do. We come in every year with the same spiel. But something significant, I think, to point out is that the value of the materials that we circulate, and that's stuff going in and out from other libraries, is about $8 million annually. So if you look at that, and that doesn't even take into consideration our programming and things that you can't necessarily put a monetary value on. So we feel that the library provides a good return on investment. So when we have these good years, we're just going to make our services better. And then just looking forward to next year, we do still have some renovations ahead. We'll be starting on the mezzanine, adding 6 study rooms and a conference room, which will also be very beneficial. Right now, we rent out a little room that we have, and it's booked every day of the week because people need a quiet space. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, we've put on the new roof. We're looking toward the air conditioning, and we're making progress on all of our capital projects. And I'm going to pass it to Rebecca Rubenstein, who is Rubenstein. I'm on the Bernstein kick, so Rubenstein, who is our treasurer.
Yes. Testing, okay. Thank you for having us. I'm Rebecca Rubenstein, and I just finished my 4th year as trustee for the Ridgewood Public Library. This is my 2nd year as board treasurer. So to summarize how the library is funded, and as Keith mentioned, New Jersey municipal libraries are legally entitled to a minimum appropriation based on what's called a 1/3 mill rate, which is calculated as 33 cents on each $1,000 of equalized value of all accessible property in the village. Equalized value is the estimated market value of your home as compared to the assessed value, which is the value of your home reflected on the tax rolls of the municipality. The library's minimum appropriation has increased over the past few years. This year, it is 8% higher than 2023. And the library understands that this level of funding fluctuates year over year, and an increase is not always guaranteed. The library is fortunate to be able to supplement its appropriation with money raised by two outstanding fundraising organizations, Friends of the Ridgewood Library and Ridgewood Library Foundation, which collectively pay for all cultural and educational programming, databases, museum passes, technology, selected building improvements, and much, much more. As with other municipalities, health benefits continue to increase, and the higher appropriation this year will help offset those costs, as well as a proposed 3% salary increase. Later in 2024, the library is planning to launch a slow rollout of passport services to the community. We expect associated personnel costs will be absorbed by shifting some hours of existing staff. And while we anticipate only a small amount of net income this year, it's a path to generating some material income in future years. As you know, the Pease Library Building provides substantial rental income from its two tenants, Northwest Bergen Central Dispatch, aka 911, and the newest tenant, Bowler Engineering. The building has been self-sustaining despite ongoing maintenance and adherence to historical specifications. In 2024, the library will finish paying for the replacement of all 4 HVAC units at Pease, as well as pay off the balance of a real estate commission, both of which fulfill the contractual obligations of its leases. Beginning next year, the Pease Library will start clean, and a larger amount of net rental income will flow into the operating budget. In 2024, the library will use a portion of a donor bequest designated for books and materials to help offset its books expense. This amount of $80,000 will allow for an increase of budgeted buildings and grounds expense to fund repairs and maintenance projects that were deferred for many years due to the hope that the library would receive a construction bond grant from the New Jersey State Library, which it ultimately did not receive. In 2022, the library regrouped and made plans to make improvements in phases using private funds raised by Library Foundation. And in 2023, interior upgrades began with the creation of a bigger teen room and the updating of its first floor circulation department and art studio. This year, the library will work towards adding study rooms on the mezzanine and longer-term projects such as upgrading the auditorium and tech lab, as well as pursuing grants to renovate the bathrooms in order to become ADA compliant. Finally, there is a $65,000 capital budget request to supplement the cost of the much-needed electrical hookup of the generator sitting adjacent to the library. The generator hookup will provide a valuable service to the community, allowing full use of the building in the event of power outage and allowing the library to become a hub in emergencies. Thank you for your consideration, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Questions, council?
I have a couple. Under technology, there's a 133% increase. What's that all about?
Okay, so we had to add some funds for a consultant due to an ongoing personnel issue.
Oh, I see. Mhm.
And we wanted to make sure that we had enough
Coverage.
budgeted. It is likely that we will come in under that amount, but we just wanted to be sure
Okay.
that we covered our technology needs.
And then down towards the bottom, audit, bank fees, legal, there's an increase of 155%, additional legal fees in the notes or comments. What's that based on?
Related to the ongoing personnel issue.
Gotcha.
So I just wanted to say a couple things. So one, thank you. I always love the library because you have alternate sources of income, which is so great. And because some of the public's watching, I love that Pease is such a revenue generator, and you guys are finally reaping the benefit where we're seeing Pease come into your budget. So Rebecca, you're the best treasurer. I don't think you're ever quitting, because we're not going to let you. But that is like such a compliment to bring in that much revenue, and because it's your birthday year, I think Mrs. P has set that up so well. It's such a great agreement, and I'm so impressed with it. Two, I want to say, from my perspective, when I went over last year's request and this year's, I want to advocate for the generator. One, because Glenn has talked to me so much about the generator. The generators at Ridgewood Water, and if you guys want to, for the rest of the council, this is like a public safety issue for me, because in the event of a power outage, it would be very advantageous to have the library powered. We did say no to them last year, and one of the things I always feel like when we have these high-performing groups like the library, financially and holistically in every way, because I love the library, is that I want to make sure we advocate for that $65,000, because I felt like, similar to carryover from capital last year, I felt like it was a good capital expense last year, and I think it's great this year. And that's all. That's it.
Mayor, if I may, just to piggyback off those comments, so the $65,000 for the generator is being recommended for capital. One of the things that Lori and I have talked about is utilizing the library as a cooling or warming station, especially when we have power outages during extreme weather events. We did investigate whether or not there would be any FEMA grants or any type of emergency management grants that would support that, and we came up empty at this point. And that's one of the reasons that we want to put an emphasis on the $65,000 to hook up the generator. And again, as the councilwoman said, that machinery would support both the Ridgewood Water Building and the public library once it's hooked up.
Which is half the total cost of the installation. The library would be absorbing the other half.
So just to clarify, so we're essentially just budgeting what we're legally obligated to give to them under law, right?
That is correct, sir.
So first of all, thank you. I am a bit biased in that I have the privilege of being the liaison to the library board. I cannot tell you how impressed I am in every meeting that I go to. The fact, I think this is the first presentation we've had where these are non-village employees assisting Lori. These are not folks that are paid to be here. These are people that are doing it on their own time. We are, as a village, so amazingly blessed to have the Friends, the foundation, all the volunteers. The meetings that I go to are just impeccably run. And the fact that we get so much for so little for what we give to them is a testament, Lori, to you and your staff, but the dozens of volunteers that do just amazing work to make the library the jewel that it is. The passport service, thank you. My family and I had to go to Waldwick this year to use their passport service. It felt wrong. I had to hide my face. I didn't want anybody to see me ducking into the Waldwick Library.
But Waldwick is a great role model for passport services.
They did a really nice job, so I was about to get to that. Even outside of looking at it as a revenue stream, I'm less interested in that than I am just the service that we'll provide to Ridgewood residents, how easy it was, how flawless it was. We made an appointment, we went in, like 2 months later, we had the passports mailed back to us, just so well executed. I'm sure you guys will do a great job. I too echo the generator. I think it's a wonderful public safety upgrade. The fact that you all are paying for half of it is tremendous, and again, a testament to the hard work. So I've said that I don't want to bestow too much, thanks onto all these places because I have to ask the hard questions.
Too late.
I can't do it here. I can't do it. I mean, you're coming in flat. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick story because a lot of people take for granted passports. My son lives in Colorado in a remote area. He needs to renew his passport. The closest place was only 10 miles away. He goes there. The woman that used to do it isn't here any longer, and we never filled her spot, and we don't know. And, I called up the passport office, and the closest place was a 5-hour round-trip drive for him. So it's really convenient to be able to go to places for passports. So I appreciate that. Just one quick question. So besides the money that we're obligated for you, you're asking for an additional $65,000, or that's already included in the obligation?
The $65,000 is the capital request.
Right.
So
Oh, the
that's
capital
outside
request.
the operating
Okay.
budget.
All right. So just a quick question. Does Ridgewood Water put any money?
They have already.
They have already. So this is the balance.
This would be for the other half and to hook up
Okay.
the
We can't ask Ridgewood Water to do that?
They bought, so the connection, it's the connectivity between the two buildings. And so because the generator's rather large and has additional power that is left unused unless we put the connection in place.
Right,
Okay.
so
If you
Lorraine,
don't-
they hooked up, they paid for their hookup from the generator to water. Now we need to pay for the electrical hookup from the generator to the library.
Okay.
And
It's
from
a
a best,
$130,000 extension cord, basically, right?
Okay.
and from a
No, it's
best,
truly a safety issue. I totally agree.
yeah, and from
Yeah.
a best practices standpoint, Ridgewood Water is a standalone utility. The library is an autonomous board. So it is better from an auditing standpoint and from a financial standpoint for everybody to pay their
Right.
part in sharing this piece of equipment. The beauty of it is that we're sharing a piece of equipment and we don't have two
Right.
generators
That's right.
over on
Is
the
the
other side of the parking
generator,
lot.
I'm not even exactly sure, I know it's placed, it's on the library property, correct?
Yes.
How high up is it? Like, if we were to get flooded, is it protected?
It's on a pedestal. You have to.
A high
walk up-
pedestal.
And that particular area is.
Closer.
Just speaking to the
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone.
It's on a pedestal. You have to climb stairs to get to it. And
Okay.
it is in our lowest lying area, but it is not in danger of.
So there's no
of flood.
concern?
There is no
Okay.
concern.
All right. Thank you.
I want to echo all the great things that have been said about the library. I know that especially for the volunteers who are there at all the meetings and at all the things, this is a mission. This is a passion. And we are so fortunate to have such an incredibly successful library in our community, serving our community. I know the number, but please say it out loud, how many visitors we get per month. Because I just love hearing it, and I'm stunned every time I hear it. It's more than that.
It's more than that.
I know it's more than that.
Where are my visitors? Oh, yeah, 10,000 plus a month. That is our number.
Well, I know the number to be so much bigger that I'm not going to say it out loud because for fear that my number is inaccurate, but let's just say that it is a very big number and a lot of people get a lot out of that library. And I think that the mission of providing safe haven in a storm, where there's a power outage, by having a standalone generator there is essential. I will not say that this will be done at the end of this. We have to see what we have and what we can afford. I will tell you that, and I know I speak for the entire council, that we all want to get this done this year.
Yep.
So we're going to take a look at the end, but I know that this is a priority for us. So
Thank you.
thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Because I'm ready.
We're good.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
good luck with the rest of the budgets.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you want to take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back and do Heather, mine, and village manager?
Sure.
Village attorney?
You want to go a little further?
Your
or
call, whatever you want to do.
Let's go a little deeper. What we got? Well,
Can we like go another 45 minutes and be done?
45, wait,
Surely.
45 minutes is a long time for my sandwich to be sitting there. Let's take 10 now, and then move on.
Okay, only 10 though. Somebody put on your time. I'm putting on a time.
They were off. They were off. Which is a very good move, by the way. I will.
So if you could just call the meeting back to order, Mayor.
Let's call the meeting back to order. Will you take a roll call?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Perrin? Here. Councilmember Reynolds?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Winograd? Here. And Mayor Vagianos?
Here.
Okay.
And let's go on to the next line item, which is village clerk.
Here she comes. Here she comes.
So, I just want to kind of go over major things that we can quantify in the village clerk's office. So last year, we did 681 OPRA requests, processed them. Some are very simple, but most of them are multiple departments or multiple emails or multiple requests. There are days when we get 6 requests in a day, 10 requests in a day. Sometimes we get none. So you can never predict it. It's always a surprise, let's say. Raffle licenses, we processed 23. Parking permits, we sold 213. Commuter parking permits and CBD parking permits were 1,138. That includes the stickers, the monthly hang tags, the 24/7, 365, and the overnight. And there were 160 garage sales, which includes coordinating the 2 townwide garage sales with the individual who does that twice a year. So that's basically what we have. So village clerk, it really has not gone up much at all. We are finally at full staff. I'm very excited. We have myself, the deputy, and 2 clerk typists in our clerk's office, and then we have a morning receptionist and afternoon receptionist. Our afternoon receptionist just started last week, and everything is going well, so it's very exciting to be able to say we're at full staff. That'll help. Individually, I don't think there's a large increase in any. The only one is the, that I see is the village code updates. The amount spent is actually less than half of what the actual is. It's probably close to $8,000 that we've spent, and that's because the December bill has not yet been processed. So we do updates in July and December, so that has not yet been processed. Oh, and basically my budget, 90% of it is out of my control. It's things like legal advertising, which depends on what ordinances we adopt. You know, other professional services includes our minutes, and that's, again, how long our meetings are. And then the things that are, and then the village code updates as well. And the things that were within our control, the office supplies, conferences and meetings, and professional association dues is about what we have control over. So we do need to have, I do need to go to conferences for CEUs to maintain my certification. The deputy is probably going to go for her RMC test sometime this year. Either, it's usually April and October, so I'm not sure which one she's going to choose, but she's going to try to obtain her certification as well. And then she also will have to obtain CEUs. Some of them are close to home. A lot of them we do at our county association meetings, so it's easy to get. And then others, as you know, are in Atlantic City, and that's twice a year. So, any other questions?
Questions?
But overall, you're coming in at 2% lower than you came in last year. You know, Heather, you could have started with that
Okay.
and
You
just,
didn't actually
and then I
mention, I was
didn't have to say
waiting
just
anything
for
else.
dropped the
that.
mic
There you
and
go.
walked
And walk
away, and we
okay.
would have all been okay
That
with
would have
that.
been okay. Okay.
Which actually, I think we would have scheduled you first and said, this is the standard,
There you go.
meet that, and we're good.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No, and Heather, I suggest you run before we come up with some questions.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
No,
Evan
and
summed
then
it up, so.
I just have to do elections as well.
next.
So this year, obviously, we have a municipal election. The biggest expense is always our other contractual services, which is through the county clerk. They charge us for the primary election. And it's based on the number of mail-in ballots that they send out. They actually charge the towns individually back for how many they process and send out. And so we never know how much it's going to be. It was 24,000 last year, probably around 20,000 for a while, but because this is a presidential election, that could easily go up to 25, 27,000. We usually at the general election for president, we get usually around a 75% turnout. So depending, I mean, you know, our primary is late, obviously. By that time, it's usually already decided who the candidates are. However, if that's not the case, then, you know, there are a lot of people who want to vote in the presidential primary as well. So that's the biggest expense there. Anything else?
Anybody?
Yeah, I have two questions. So with school security, are any of the HSAs still kicking in to match any of that?
Yeah, we pay for half, and this is just on election day. So we pay for half, and the Board of Education pays for half. And they are only there during school hours, because after school, really their concern, and I understand, are the teachers and the students. And other than that, you know, after 3:30, the security is no longer there. But obviously, there are custodians, there are other, obviously, the police are nearby. So it was basically so nothing would happen during the school day.
Okay, and then not this year, but do you imagine next year, given the effects of early voting, we may see a reduction in polling locations?
Not that many people take advantage of early voting, unfortunately. And the county is actually looking to consolidate locations. So the Board of Elections, anytime you change polling locations, has to be approved by the Board of Elections. So the Board of Elections is looking into it. They certainly won't do it during a presidential year, and possibly not even next year because it's a gubernatorial year. However, they are looking to do that. You know, we have to fill out a polling place accessibility form every year. And this year, for the first time, they asked us to check how many outlets were in the locations and how many, you know, so that they could potentially see where we could consolidate. I think it's probably going to be coming from them more than from us, because you don't want to have polling locations that have astronomical numbers of registered voters in them, because even though it's maybe once or twice every 4 years with governor and president that we get the huge turnout, you also don't want lines out the door all day long. So I highly encourage, though, for anyone who's listening and here, to please take advantage of early voting if, you know, you cannot go to the polls on election day, because they are open. It's approximately, I believe it's 10 days, it may be just over a week that they are open, and they're even open on Saturday and Sunday. And so it would be really beneficial, because those votes are then the first ones counted when the polls closed. So, you know, those are pretty much accounted for. Those numbers are released, and then the votes as they come in from all the districts on election day are the next ones. And of course, the final ones are the provisionals and the mail-ins that they get late. So, good.
Anyone else?
That was easy. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Wait a minute. We don't want to make it easy. Next.
Through you, Mayor, we'll move on to the village attorney budget. Major highlights in this budget include the restoration of a litigation line item, which is line item 046. In 2022, it was $50,000. When it was modified last year, $20,000 was cut out of that to bring it down to $30,000. Bob and I are recommending, at least for preparation of the initial budget, that we consider moving that number back up to $50,000 in case there's unanticipated litigation. We're also placing in this year's proposal $25,000 for our labor attorney. We have 2 union contracts that are upcoming in 2024. Both the blue collar and the white collar contracts are set to be negotiated, and we have a carryover contract that expired in 2023 with the supervisors. Those negotiations, I'm proud to say, are going well. However, due to the transition in the manager position, we were a little late in starting those negotiations, which is why the contract lapsed. But I'm hopeful that in the first quarter of this year, that contract will be renegotiated and settled. The third piece is miscellaneous expenses, line item 98. Again, at one point, that in 2022, that line item was $200,000. Last year it was modified to $1,000, and this year we're looking to bring it back up to $10,000. I just want to make note that the overall budget from 2022 to the evolution of this budget, at one point it was $468,000. Last year it was $234,000, and this year with those restorative cuts for litigation and negotiations primarily, it's up to $289,000. So that's the village attorney's budget. Any questions?
Yes, I see the appropriation for the prosecutor, but the public defender is 0. Is that somewhere else?
Public defender's 40. So on the prosecutor, last year, $20,000 was budgeted, but he was actually paid out because I think it's set by ordinance, $30,000. Kim this year is recommending an increase of $1,000 for the prosecutor, which is minimal in the grand scheme of things. The public defender position, I think, is housed in the court.
Nothing in the detail either.
Was that in municipal clerk, in clerk?
Yeah.
The court clerk, municipal clerk. Sorry, municipal court. Yeah, that was moved to municipal court. So if you go back to the municipal court,
It wasn't
yes.
there.
No?
It wasn't there.
Thought it was.
Nope.
It's the last line item under municipal court.
Oh, it is?
$6,500.
65?
Yes.
I don't see 65. Oh, down.
Yeah,
I see.
it's
I
below
see.
the total budget numbers. That's
I
why
see.
you couldn't see it.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so that percentage increases so much because it shifted, it went
Yeah,
from one place.
and what we can actually do, Deputy Mayor, is Olivia, 040 can actually be taken out of this budget for on the village attorney side, just so that there's no confusion going forward.
So you're going to put it back in the village attorney?
No, we'll probably leave it in the court, unless the AOC approved our budget, so I think it's satisfactory to have it there. But I think so it's not duplicative in 2 different budgets, with one line item being 0, I think we'll just take it out, so it's cleaner. All right?
Could I just have a question? So you said in 2022, the litigation budget was $468,000?
Not the litigation budget, the total budget.
Total
for
budget?
the village attorney, right, was 468.
And there was
this year, the proposal is 289.
And what would constitute a miscellaneous? I mean, I'm comfy with 10,000, but what would ever cause a miscellaneous contribution under legal?
I'll yield to Bob on that, because that was a 22 appropriation.
So Matt Rogers would have given us a list of litigation, which I can't talk about, but that's what going here, and I would just lump sum it to one number.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, I guess my only quite really is the litigation budget. I mean, I see that we spent only $13,000 last year. I mean, in other years, how much have we spent? Because it's a pretty big gap between what we're budgeting and what we actually spent last year.
It is probably the hardest line item to budget for, that and utilities, because we don't have a crystal ball as to what might be coming at us, so to speak. I always feel more comfortable with a few more dollars in the litigation line item in case something unforeseen is brought forward. But again, depending on where we are when the year-end numbers are calculated and where we need to trim, before we present the final budget to council, that'll be one of the line items that's flagged.
Yeah, because I mean, the increase that you're asking for, I know it's not a huge amount of money, but it's like $100,000 more than you actually spent last year. That's like a third of the total outlay here. So, in the grand scheme of things, I get it. But it does seem like, and I agree with you, Keith, let's be cautious.
Right.
But that's a lot of caution.
And just to remember, too, that there is a somewhat of an attempt here, keeping the bottom line in mind, to sort of get some of these line items back to where they were in '22, so that we don't run the risk of overexpending any line items in 2024.
I mean,
One of the things that could go through here as well are tax appeals. When they get to the state court level, if it requires adjudication, if you go back and forth, you might have costs in here that we don't know about right now. I'm not aware of any, but the other night when we talked with the tax assessor about that reserve for tax appeals, that's sort of that cushion for the tax piece of it. And then there's also the attorney representation from our side. So as Keith pointed out, it's a very difficult budget to put together as we are right now. A month from now, this may change.
So, yeah, I look forward to those numbers because a 30% increase over what we spent last year, to me, strikes me as a little too cautious. And that's great 2 years from now, I guess, when we get to spend that money, whatever's left of it. But, again, I hear what you're saying.
Anything else of the attorney? Okay, moving on to the village council. So the only major changes to the village council's budget is the line item 048, which is professional services. We have our grant writer, which the council entered into contract with late last year, budgeted there. And we also have the consultant for the special improvement district in the CBD. So those are the two main changes as far as that 048 line item going into 2024.
Where is, I see the professional services, those two are in that 70,000?
Yeah, if you flip back to page 048, it'll give you a detail with those two line items.
So I would assume right now we have, since the person just started late December, there's no, we have received nothing.
For which position?
For the grant writer.
So the grant writer, we've engaged their services. We now have full portal access. Each of the department directors and some of the supervisors have access to the grant portal. We're receiving updates every day to potential grants. Where we have to make a decision as to where our spending goes with regard to the grant writer is whether we're going to write some of these grants in-house. For example, engineering does all of the road grants, all of those types of things. He's gonna maintain that responsibility. The open space grant, we're probably going to kick to the grant writer. They have extensive experience writing open space grants for Bergen County. We also want to apply for the historic aspect of the Bergen County grant program for the pedestrian tunnel. Deputy Mayor and I were in a meeting on that on Friday. And then there are grants every day that the departments are starting to evaluate and look through as to where they're going to apply.
don't leave them out. Shade Tree. Shade Tree
Shade Tree.
definitely wants to go for Fort. No, they do. They really are obsessed with writing grants. And last year we applied and we thought on our own, we thought we were grant worthy. So I feel like Shade Tree and Parks both want to utilize them more, which is a good thing.
Okay.
And also, I would like to keep our eyes open for something to clean up the World War I memorial.
So Keith, I'll just repeat what I had said when we considered appointing this person. Very supportive. It's a great use of money because we should be able to get a lot of money back from it.
They have
But
to cover their
ultimately, when
cost.
this comes to us next year, I'm not going to care how many grants we wrote. I'm not going to care how many grants we submitted. I'm going to care about how many dollars we got.
Understood.
So understand my eyes on the prize on this one. So I'm good for this year. It's a great investment, but trying is not. Unlike I tell my kids, just trying is not enough here.
They have to cover their cost tenfold, right?
Exactly. Maybe ninefold. I'll be nice in the first year.
There you go. Duly noted.
He is softening with age.
Any other questions on village council? Okay.
All good. Let's go.
Moving on to the manager's budget. First, and I think I've mentioned it at a few meetings thus far, we've restructured the assistant to the village manager position, formerly held by Janet Fricky, to a communications and special projects director position. That person will be starting on our team on Tuesday. Very proud of moving forward. We're going to really tackle some of the communication challenges and really make an effort to get information out to the public in real time. So that line item has actually been reduced from last year. There is some breakage in that salary. So that's on the salary and wages side. In addition, we have increases in line item 028. The two major changes in that are $12,000 for background checks. All new employees are going to be required to have a thorough background check before being hired. So that is one of the newly instituted budget requests here. And then the second is for staff training. We've undertaken a new system to evaluate municipal employees across the village. In 2024, every employee of the Village of Ridgewood will be formally evaluated, whether they are up for any type of increment adjustment or not. So we are in the process right now of working with a consulting firm to train both our directors and our supervisors in the staff evaluation process. They've actually had a hand in creating the new forms that we modeled off of what they do in the fire department. We'll be launching that this spring. All employees who are up for a July adjustment, they will be evaluated in May and June, and then all employees will be evaluated in September and October, and that process will be completed by November 1st of each year. So those are the two additions to that 028 line item. Everything else pretty much remains stable or has been reduced.
Questions? All good. Let's go.
All right. I think that actually rounds it out, right? Do we want to do yours? Okay, so Mayor, just to adjust the schedule ever so slightly, with the move of OEM to next Wednesday, the 21st, I think we're going to move to the areas that Bob covers tonight while we have a little capacity. And then we'll wrap it up there, and we'll pick up with emergency management, water, and solid waste and recycling on next Wednesday. So, Bob?
Sure, so I'm going to do finance, tax collector, and I'm going to touch upon parking as I know it now. So we'll do finance first. So in my department, we have about an 8% increase this year. Sure, under finance.
Yeah, look for
RGR.
the RGR yellow tab. Those are Bob's initials. Everything after that is his problem.
Correct.
So we're under finance,
I do
right?
love
Yeah.
the RGR because it throws me every single time. Even on the emails, I'm just like, I just go straight for Rooney
It's
now.
in here 100
I
times in
know.
this budget document.
You should have seen what happened when I set up my email account. Everybody is just two initials, first and last. I had to have the G in the middle, so that created controversy. Anyway, we got it? Well set?
Yep.
Ready to roll?
All set.
All right, so under finance, full-time employees stay the same. I'm looking for, I budgeted last year for 6,000 for part-time, and I'm also looking for time for temporary and seasonal and overtime. I am short two people right now, one in the that works for my tax collector, and I will be short one as we wrap this budget up. Pleasantly so. She's going to bring a beautiful baby into this world. So I need somebody that's going to step in for her during her absence. She promised me that she would not leave until the day before the birth and 2 days after. So only kid.
You're giving her the whole 3 days?
I had to barter for that. She wanted, like 4.
You guys are getting so soft on me. I can't stand it.
I know, it's tough. And then under other expenses, the big change there is under other contractual services. We are going to move forward with a time and attendance system. We tried to implement this several years ago. We bought the time clocks, had them all set up, and then COVID struck and stopped that process completely. So I'm fortunate enough where I can use the same clocks. They'll be tested in a couple of weeks just to make sure they still have the same, that they're upgraded with the software. But we will be using them for time and attendance. We'll be minimizing a lot of time that's spent today on a manual system of updating people's time. You wouldn't believe how many people touch a piece of paper to get it to where it's final. That's all going to be eliminated. We're going to have the opportunity for people to enter their time in mobily if they're off-site, do it on their computer. They can actually do it on a phone, our own phone system. There's controls that will be put in place to make sure that people can't do that, haphazardly. Supervisors will be able to go through vacation requests, time off requests. It's just going to minimize a lot of paperwork that we do right now. So, and the big part about this, it gives us documentation for, God forbid, any FEMA events occur. Because one of our challenges has always been when FEMA asks for documentation for time during an event, we scramble. And then we provide them haphazard time reports that they want tied out to the minute. This gives us the opportunity to identify every time that's been put in by whatever department to document those FEMA requests. So it's a very good thing that we're going to be implementing for this year. Village-wide, yes. Every department. I'm sorry, let me back up. Not police and not fire. Police have their own system, VCS, which is tied in. We have access. We have all the controls built into that. But because of their shifts, it'd be very difficult to implement into our system. Fire, again, because of their long days, difficult to administer to. So they keep their own system. Police keeps their own. Everything else will be covered by this time and attendance system. Questions? Finance?
Anybody? Looks like we're good, Bob.
I
So
do
we'll do
just want
my-
to say, Olivia, good luck. I mean, we're very excited to have 10 additional toes and fingers on the budget next year.
Can I just mention the time and attendance system? In two of my other experiences, we've implemented a system like this. It cuts down on man hours of having to track people's time, benefit time, time at retirement, all of those different things. It also enables the employee to go in and request time off, and immediately an email is sent to the supervisor asking for authorization for that person to take the day. There's just a lot of built-in efficiencies and a significant reduction in paperwork that goes along with this system. Plus, it almost guarantees completely accurate attendance records. So I commend Bob for reinstituting this initiative post-COVID. And we're going to sit with our friends on the union side and talk about the implementation of this so that it protects everybody. It protects the village and it protects the employees just as much.
Thank you for doing that, Bob.
So next we have tax collector. So I won't speak of salaries and wages because Evan said if I'm below 2%, I'm okay. Right?
I stand by that.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, and then Evan's going to ask for a little more.
I'm just going to wait to the next line before we got to me asking for it.
All right, let me just do salaries and wages. So we have a new tax collector, as you're aware, and by Nicole moving into the tax collector's position and filling in with a new person, which is yet to be hired, I do have some savings there on the annual salary. Other expenses. So for the most part, if you add back the $10,000 I cut last year, I'm down overall, so nothing to talk about. I cut $10,000 out of this budget last year. So if you take that and add it to the budget appropriation of $30,675, you'll be at $40,675. Right, Evan?
Sorry, I'm
So in the 2023 budget, he's at 3675.
So when we were talking, we went back to prior years. Let me get the line item, I cut it. have it right here.
I mean, it looks like you've been consistent since 2022, right?
Yeah, hold on, let me just get it, please. 022 was the line item I cut last year. So if you look at 022, you'll see I took $10,000 out of that budget to reduce it down to 36.
Okay.
So this year, if you added that back, I'm really below it. I'm short of last year's ask.
So I'm not going to beat you. It looks like you're asking for like 8 grand more than what you actually spent and budgeted, so on other expenses. So I'm not going to beat you up too bad, but if you got 2 years where you didn't miss the 10,000, why are we adding it back in?
Postage costs have gone up drastically. So is our, the mailing costs for our tax bills.
So can I ask a question about that? Because you know about me and paper and the mail. Do we have to, by law, do that?
Do what?
Mail all the tax bills that I get in the mail? I mean, is there an opt-out system for people who, like me, don't love mail? I get a lot of mail.
I am not aware of the opportunity for you to say I don't want it mailed to me.
So it has to go to everybody?
That's my understanding.
I think that might take an act of legislation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a joke. You clearly haven't heard about my mail issue. I'll let Paul deliver it.
Plus-
No, it's fine. It's, as
Plus,
long as
that
it's required.
that information also has to go to the mortgage company.
Okay.
Insurance company, so it has to be shared many places, not on our,
No,
on our
it's okay.
dime.
I mean, that's a completely acceptable answer if it's required. I
Yes.
mean, I'm not alone that when you get all this mail, people are like, nowadays, couldn't this be
yeah.
emailed?
I agree. It's the only
Okay, phew,
piece of
thanks,
paper I get
Evan.
anymore with a bill is from you guys, so, but it's required, it's required.
Right.
Is this required by state law?
To my knowledge, yes.
Perhaps this is something that we can begin to lobby for, that we can then, at least where it's agreed to by our the individual taxpayer, that they can receive it by email.
That's a good point.
So can we look into that for next year?
We can.
It's a good
Well,
thing.
I think we'd have to look into lobbying. I mean, this is one of those things to make you feel better. It's like the calendar. Some people love getting the calendar in print, which I learned, and some people don't want it, and some people would prefer to opt in and opt out. But the paper and the commitment to paper and mailing, which is required, is huge. We as a village print and send a lot of paper.
Let's not forget
I
about
know,
this for next year.
I know.
And move on. Next.
All right, so let's touch upon parking. So the good news is, on a preliminary basis, I have covered with the revenues this year my appropriations, so that's always a positive sign. I have to look into the breakdown as to the revenues by source, but as of right now, and this is preliminary, it doesn't appear as if we would need a rate increase for next year. Okay, but I'm going to do preliminary. Budget standpoint, we're looking for another 1% increase in the budget. We have two full-time parking officers, and we have two part-time PEOs. From what I understand, I know from the two full-times, they're doing a fantastic job. They've blended in well with the district. They seem to be communicating well with the store owners down there and those that are seeing them on the streets. And I think they're being well received. Of course, every once in a while you get a glitch on parking complaint, but that's going to happen. It's just the way of life. But I do think that they're doing the job that we've hired them to do, and they also appear to be very conscientious. They're looking to work. Some of them want to work more if they can, so they don't mind doing the weekends and extra time. So they're pretty good. From an overall standpoint of other expenses, debt service is relatively flat. Statutory expenditures, relatively flat. The other expense allocation, same as last year. And the other expense charges so far, This is the high point. I anticipate this number to go down after we start looking at some of the actuals that went through for the prior year. But, so I think the budget that I'm proposing right now of $2.7 million, I anticipate being down to about $2.5 million. But I don't have those final numbers yet.
Yeah, I'm going to look for that. I mean, it looks like you're asking overall for about 200,000 more than we budgeted last year. But in terms of expenditures, it's a little less than $500,000 more than you actually spent. That strikes me as a huge number. And it does concern me that the bulk of it is other expenses, which is a little amorphous. So I'll reserve until we maybe get some better numbers, because I'm not completely comfortable with the transparency on this one.
Understood.
Other questions? Let's go.
So that's it for me.
Yeah.
Just to circle back on the tax bill question, it's NJSA 54:4-64, delivery of tax bills. And it does refer to the tax collector's obligation to prepare and mail. Although there is a provision for otherwise deliver, but I don't know that that's ever been taken advantage of. But
And
it
I'm
does
just
say
wondering,
prepare or mail.
Does your source show when the last time that statute was updated?
2022, interestingly enough.
Really?
But he did just say there's a, look, it's small, and I just think from a service standpoint, it's worth looking. If otherwise delivered, it just, with COVID, e-signatures, e-things are, maybe we ask Matt.
Yeah, no, he would be the next source.
I mean, just as a check, because we do.
I just Googled it, so it's
Okay.
not.
Thank you.
I don't profess to be an attorney like
Yeah.
other folks in the room. Yeah.
Maybe it's something other.
Good. Do we have anything else?
No, just want to say thank you. Today was a much better day than the last one. I'm still a little concerned by having to make up ground from some of the percentages that were asked in the last meeting. So I look forward to the next meeting, and again, just reiterate that, we are going to come in at a much more palatable number than where we started, and certainly than we were on the last year. But again, really nice work tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody
Should we
else?
get through everybody next time?
Real quick,
Or
I'm going to
are
go
there
over
two
what we're
more
doing next
times?
time.
Go ahead.
Okay?
Sure.
So we have OEM with Jeremy. Rich Calby's going to be doing water, solid waste, and recycling. I believe, and we'll leave this open, we'll be going through the final capital funds, the final capital budget, debt service, statutory expenditures, revenues from the general fund and water, trust funds, surplus, staff levels, and an overall final budget. So that's the plan.
And that's next Wednesday, right?
No, it's the 21st. It's our
21st.
next one. Next Wednesday would be our public meeting.
Valentine's Day.
It's the 21st. It's the next one.
Make sure your wife brings you flowers.
She always does.
Don't forget the roses. It's in the budget.
No, roses. If I got my wife roses at Valentine's Day, she'd be really mad at me. It's like, you can do it any other time of year for a fraction of the cost. So, and with that, if we have nothing else, let's go back to public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thanks.